Hi, this is Kevin at the Virtual Planetarium at Raritan Valley Community College. Welcome to our weekly Star Talk. Today we're going to be talking about a very lonely star that we can see in the southern part of the sky during the fall season. But before we do that, let's talk about our upcoming moon phases. We have a last quarter moon on September 28th. We have a new moon on October 6th, and then a first quarter moon on October 12th. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about a very lonely star that we can see in the southern part of the sky during this time of the year. So we have our sky set up for about 10 o'clock at night, and we're looking towards the southeast. If we look at our sky, we have the S over here for south, and then the SE for southeast over here. And this is actually the same direction that Jupiter and Saturn are in the sky. We've talked about them a lot these last few weeks. Again, Jupiter is very easy to find. It's very bright in the sky. And actually, speaking of Jupiter, in case you didn't see, a few weeks ago, an amateur astronomer caught this really cool video of something hitting Jupiter. That's a little bright flash that you see right here in this video. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen this. In 1994, we actually saw a comet fly into Jupiter, which is really cool. I'm going to put a link for that in the description of this video. And it certainly is not the first time that something has hit Jupiter, and it's not something rare at all. Being the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter actually keeps us safe from a lot of stuff like asteroids and rogue objects that are just hurling around our solar system. Since Jupiter is so big, it has a huge gravitational pull, so it pulls everything towards it, or it deflects it. So because we have Jupiter out there, it actually keeps us safe because a lot of things, instead of hitting us, they either go into Jupiter or get caught in its orbit. That's why Jupiter has so many moons. Or it deflects off of Jupiter and goes off in some other direction. So we are very thankful of Jupiter because it keeps us very safe from all these unknown flying objects in our solar system. Okay, but back to the star. If we find Jupiter in the sky and we go down at about 7:30, 7 o'clock in this direction, we see a very lonely bright star in the sky. And this is a star called Fomalhaut. Now, I say it's a lonely star because when you look in this direction in the real sky, you really won't be able to see any other stars around it. The closest star we have is over here, and this one might actually not be bright enough to see with the light pollution that we have here in New Jersey. Now, obviously, it's not the only star in this part of the sky. If we change the light pollution filter and get rid of it a little bit, we can see a lot more stars in this part of the sky. But the reality is, from how much light pollution we have, because of how close we are to the city, we can't really see that many other stars, and so this star looks really lonely right here in this part of the sky. Now, this star, again, it's called Fomalhaut, and it belongs to the constellation of Pisces Austrinus, or the Southern Fish. And what's cool about this star is that it's actually a really young star with a disk around it. This picture right here was actually taken by the Hubble Space Telescope, and the star would actually be in the middle of this picture, but we get rid of the star because it's so bright, and that way we can see the other stuff around it. And I really love this picture because it looks like something very familiar. But it's not the Eye of Sauron, don't worry, he's not actually looking at us looking for the One Ring from outer space. No, this disk, or ring, is something called a protoplanetary disk. This is usually around very young stars that have just formed, and it's basically the leftover stuff from the star. This is actually something very similar to what our sun had when it formed, and the disk that was around our sun eventually formed into the planets that make up our solar system. And not just the planets, but also the asteroids, and basically everything else in our solar system came from that protoplanetary disk. And actually, for the longest time, we thought that we saw a planet in this protoplanetary disk as well. We thought it was one of the few direct images of an exoplanet because when we zoomed into the disk, we saw this little dot right here, and we saw it in two separate instances. We saw it once in 2004, and then we saw it again in 2006, and it was moving in an orbit, so we could see its curve, and we could tell that it was going to form an orbit around the star. Naturally, astronomers got really excited, But sadly, when we looked at it again a few years later, we could tell that it was gone. And from this data, we could infer that it was actually a cloud of stuff that was just dissipating around this star. We think that it was probably caused by two colliding objects that generated this giant cloud of dust, but it's still really cool to be able to see the stuff happening around another star. Because even though it's not actually a planet, we can see all this other stuff that's going on around this very young star in this protoplanetary disk, which is probably very similar to what happened as our solar system was forming. So even though we can't go back in time and look at our own solar system when it was forming, we can look at other stars and find other examples that are in different stages of their life, and that way we can learn more about how we formed as well. So that's pretty cool. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hope you learned something new. You should definitely go outside and try to find Fomalhaut. Again, it is very easy to find. If you find Jupiter up in the sky and you go down and to the left a little bit, it is the only bright star in the area. Don't try to find the rest of the constellation of Pisces Austrinus because it is really dim and really hard to find. If you like this video, be sure to give us a like, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be putting out a new video every week. Once again, thank you for joining us and hope you have a great week.